I was trying to think, what would I want to hear? What would I have wanted to hear when I was sitting in the same kind of seats that you're sitting in now? And perhaps the biggest message is you can't really plan that far ahead in terms of next steps. So I remember when I was about 15 years old, I had the vague aspiration at the time to create a software company, to grow it, to sell it, but I didn't know how I was going to go about doing that. The reason I had that aspiration was I would basically spend most of my time playing video games, and I realized that that was a big business. And I also spent a lot of time building them. So I was, been programming since I was about 8 or 9 years old, programming all the way up until university. Because I loved programming so much, I decided that what I wanted to study was computer science. That was the best way for me to continue doing that. And so I chose my A-levels to optimize for that. I wasn't really thinking, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, therefore I should do these things. I was simply thinking, I want to be the best programmer I can be, therefore I should do these subjects. And the subjects I chose were maths, further maths, biology, and physics. So did that, did reasonably well at those subjects, and then went on to Cambridge. All the way up until Cambridge, I was building stuff. Every day since I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was building stuff, building software. Got to Cambridge and something funny happened. It's kind of hard to be there. It's a tough university to study at, so I actually stopped building. I stopped making software and started studying and took 3 or 4 years out to do that, to really learn the craft of computer science. Graduated, kind of emerged out of this sea of theoretical computer science and thought, oh, what next? I remember I had that dream once upon a time to go and start a company, so maybe I should do that. And I was somewhat deluded. I started a PhD because for some reason I felt that the best way to start a company would be to start a PhD. It turns out that's not the case. The best way to start a company is actually just to start a company. It took me a while to realize that. So I did the PhD for about 2 years, and then I dropped out, which is probably a story you hear a lot, but you always hear, I dropped out because it was such a great opportunity over here, I wanted to go and do that thing. I actually dropped out because it was just not fun. It was a very kind of isolated, insular-looking kind of role for me, and I wanted to be in a team. But I didn't just leave. I networked my way out. So I got heavily involved with the part of the university that helps staff and students create businesses. A student-run organization called Cambridge University Entrepreneurs. So I got involved with that committee and then eventually ran that organization. And what we would do is we would go out to large technology companies, to angel investors, to venture capital firms who invest in growing companies and say, hey, we have some of the brightest minds in the country who are trying to create new companies. Can you please give us some money? For free. Which, surprisingly, sometimes they said yes to. And we would take that money, and we would run a competition, and we would grant it to staff and students who are coming through the university. And through that route, I got to know most of the angel investors in Cambridge, which later turned out to be very helpful because I remembered that dream that I had when I was 15, that I wanted to start, grow, and sell a software company. So after helping other people do that, after leaving the PhD, after helping other people do that for about 1.5, 2 years, I decided to do it myself. So I started up a company. I raised some angel money from people I'd met whilst I was at university, whilst I was helping other people start a company, or start companies, and failed. Didn't really go anywhere. Failed for co-founder reasons. That's the usual reason why companies fail, because the co-founders don't get along. So I tried again, and failed again. I tried again, and failed again. Sometimes with the same people, sometimes with different people. It's really tough to get this off the ground. But the last company I tried actually didn't fail. It started to go somewhere. And some of the highest highs you can have are when certain magical moments happen. And one of the magical moments I'd like to share is the launch. And in our case, it was completely accidental. Most companies don't do this. Most companies plan very carefully. They orchestrate how they're going to come out to the world. via press, via seeding positive reviews, that kind of thing. Completely not the case for us. So let me tell you about the product very quickly. The last company, very simple plugin for Gmail. When people email you, we show you their photo, what they do. We make it very easy to connect them on LinkedIn. You can see a little bit of their resume. And in the very beginning of this company, January 2010, it was just me for 6 weeks, and I was hacking away on my computer. And at the end of 6 weeks, I had 10 users. These are the 10 people who were sitting around me. And I really wanted to take part in an incubator in an investment program called Y Combinator. Some of you may be familiar with this. They're investors based out in California. They have an application form. I filled it out. And on the application form, there is a field for your demo. They say, put in the URL of your demo. And they specifically say, don't password protect it because that just slows us down. It kind of gets in the way. So I'm like, okay, whatever. No one's going to figure out my domain name. So I type in the domain name into this URL. 2 days later, I'm getting pinged continuously. Thousands of tweets continuously. Skype chats just appearing continuously on my screen. We'd gone from 10 users in the space of hours to tens of thousands of users. And I was completely unprepared for this. I actually was in the pub. This was an evening for me. I'd just finished up work. I'd gone down with some mates to grab a pint, and my laptop was just going insane. Now, fortunately, we'd built our software on a platform which was able to scale, so I pulled out my phone, and I just dialed up a number of servers, and we were handling this traffic okay. It turned out what had happened was the press had somehow got hold of our URL. And they really, really liked what we'd built. They were like, this is the next big thing, this is how email should be. And publications started covering it, one after the other, and as soon as one would cover it, someone else would pick up the story and they'd keep on running with it. And then the day after that, investors started calling us, which, given I'd spent the last 5, 6 years failing to try and get something off the ground, it was like, wait a minute, this doesn't normally happen, like suddenly everyone wants to invest in my company, I don't know why. All I did was go down to the pub and then that's what happened. So that's just one example of the kind of magical moments you can have if you go down this route. It's difficult. It's not easy, but the highs are higher than any other kind of high that I see my colleagues who didn't go into entrepreneurship having. And so I think I'll leave it at that. I'm sure there'll be plenty of interesting things that come up in Q&A. I'll hand over to these guys.